It was a show 10 years in the making. Today we're talking WrestleMania 10, plus we have a big announcement. Stay tuned for something to wrestle after.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hello out there and welcome to Something to Wrestle After. This is the show for all of you fans of Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard out there to come and talk about the big reveals. We get your fan reactions, and we're going to have a little piece of news on this show. I'm not going to say any more of that kind of stuff right now. My name is Christy Olson, and we do appreciate that you have tuned in live on YouTube. You can also catch us on Apple Podcasts. And my panel today, let's start with film critic and one of the hosts of the AfterBuzz TV Raw After Show. Hello, Jim Alexander.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Glad to be here.
Are you ready for the big announcement?
Yeah, I'm like waiting with anticipation.
Pins and needles, people. And we have a familiar face, I'm sure, to all of you AfterBuzz TV wrestling and sports fans out there. We call him the Encyclopedia of Sports Entertainment. Hi, Jim. Hi, George Hermosa.
Hey, again.
Hi, Jim.
She's talking to you, right?
Now that we're good with you.
Yeah.
George Hermosa.
Hello there.
I don't think I've ever screwed up your intro before.
Yeah.
We are off to a great
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's see how this one goes.
All right.
He is a DJ, stand-up comedian, and another one of the hosts of the Raw After Show right here on AfterBuzz TV. It's Flobo Boyce.
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? That was perfect. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Oh, perfect.
Yeah. You're gonna call him Jim.
You know your audience. You know your audience.
Yo, what's up and back? I know.
Well, guys, we are talking about WrestleMania 10 today. But before we do that, we wanted to talk a little bit about this show. And we've been doing this for a few months now. I've really enjoyed hanging out with you guys. We had Steve Kaufman as well joined us for quite a while there. And it's been great to get to know some new AfterBuzz hosts in Jim and Flobo here. And for you guys to hear someone other than me, Rosenberg, Steve, and George for once. But in all honesty, there's been a lot of changes with Bruce Pritchard's show and with him himself. And
What happened to Bruce? Is there some...
oh, you haven't heard?
It's transforming now.
Yeah.
So now that Bruce is back in WWE, I find the show doesn't have maybe enough content anymore for us to sit and talk every hour. We've gone from about 4-hour episodes to like 2-hour-ish episodes, and they even admitted themselves that last week there was a lot of feedback that the show didn't have a lot of substance. And so we're going to go ahead and stop doing this show. I don't know, is there
Right
a
to the heart.
fancier better way to say it? This is the last episode of Something to Wrestle After. For the time being, should, Conrad and Bruce get going again in the way that we're used to, then perhaps we would pick it up again. But as of right now, I strongly feel that to be a great after show host, you have to be a super fan of the show. And in all honesty, I am no longer a super fan of this show. Is there anything that you gentlemen would like to say?
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, it was totally a great ride, and I was a fan of the show, and I love the fact of going back and watching the matches and using my nostalgia goggles and being like, when I was a kid, I used to do this and that. But definitely it's time for changes, and it's time to make this the best AfterBuzz network possible. So, of course, we may have to prune and change some of our show offerings, and hopefully in the future we come back together for another project. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What a nice sentiment.
That was really nicely done.
Thank you.
I will be turning this to Something to Wrestle After with Jim. Doing a solo show.
2 hours.
Yeah, I can go for 4 hours, probably about nonsense. But for me, it was just great connecting with you guys. We just had so many fun moments talking about things and making jokes, whether it's Sid crapping his pants allegedly or whatever it was. I just think like we learned from each other, I think, and just shared some cool memories together. So that's what I'm going to miss about it. But completely right. I mean, the fans are calling it to Bruce, saying that the show is watered down. So we're not missing that concept. It's obvious to apparently to everyone. And when he's doing an hour-and-a-half shows and he has nothing to talk about, like, what are we going to talk about if he has nothing to talk about?
It's just so crazy because I think most podcasts or most podcasters are saying half an hour to 45 minutes is like a long show. Yeah. So for us to be complaining about, what happened to the 4-hour shows? It's like it's so like that's how this just shows how great this podcast was in the real true long form.
That's true.
And the fact that it feels like they're not doing that anymore. It just feels like there is something missing. Where even after this week's episode, and I'm still going to listen to the show, but I'm like, that's it. I feel like WrestleMania 10 there was so much more substance to this, and I know they use the excuse like, well, we already talked about this in the archives, and I don't know, I feel like that's just an excuse to like, obviously you always want people the numbers to go up on old episodes, but I don't know, just a little weird.
Yeah.
It's got to be that. It's got to be the not a coincidence that he's back in WWE now. I just think it's time. I don't want to get into like, oh, well, maybe he's afraid to say something. I just think it's time. Like, it's hard to dedicate that much time to that when we already know how demanding that job is.
Right, that is very true. But before we are done with this one, we are going to break down their episode of WrestleMania 10. Very glad to have you here tonight, George, to be talking about all this. So let's get into it, because, you know, we did get some juicy tidbits on this little episode, and we already covered the negative feedback that they got from last week. Although I do like to hear that, you know, I'm not the only one. I don't want to feel like that fan who's just, I don't like it anymore. So to know that, yeah, I mean, to know that I wasn't the only one, that makes me feel better. So let's go back to 1994, when, you know, keeping things positive as we have been all episode, there's a dark cloud of the steroid trial hanging over WWE, and numbers for live events, not just in wrestling, but concerts and everything, are really down at this time. And WWE is going to throw themselves, you know, their biggest show of the year, 10 years in the making, WrestleMania 10. They have kind of expanded internationally to sort of save their market a little bit, the money they're not making here in America. And they have lost a big name, somebody that they've sort of built WrestleMania around for the last 10 years, and that's Hulk Hogan.
Right.
So we immediately expect that to have some sort of effect on this show. Isn't that right?
True.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that stood out to me the most, and to the point where I was, you know, group chatting my friends, like, what do you guys think of this stat, is the fact that, and I was super pumped for WrestleMania 10, but knowing that WrestleMania 10 had a lower buy rate than WrestleMania 9, that to me was like mind-boggling. But it has to be Hogan. Like, it has to be, right?
Texted back in it. I was like, that's the biggest thing that we're like, you group texted and when it was 94?
No. I mean now. Like,
oh, okay. I'm like,
when I
is
heard
this man from the future or something?
Well, back then it was AOL Instant Messenger, but like,
yes,
but yeah, I group texted my friends like a couple of days ago after I heard that tidbit. I'm like, how was that even possible? Like, was anybody more excited about WrestleMania 9 than they were WrestleMania 10?
Yeah, it has to be Hogan. Or stepping back, the whole new generation era. Like, that's the era I grew up in, and I felt like that most of my wrestling experiences from there, but that was definitely a down period. Deciding, okay, we're picking these guys to lead the charge. You're missing the spectacle of the giant bodies because everyone's slimming down and the kind of spectacle. And Randy's on his way out, as you see in this match today. I can only guarantee that was the main reason.
And even like I call BS on Bruce too, because he would say like, oh, business was down a little bit. I call shenanigans because 4 months later, Hogan and Flair do like one of the biggest buy rates ever in the history of pro wrestling. So I don't think business was down. It had to be Hogan on why 10 was lower than 9.
Yeah. If it's not Hogan, it's what he represents. That era, that kind of fanfare.
I thought it was time. We talked about it last week. The 20 was the changing of the guard, and really wasn't. It was only for a year of a changing of the guard, but this one really was. This one set up at least years down the road, because everything until then, it was all about Hogan. Even WrestleMania 9, he hijacked the main event, you know? Like, for me, that was like, you're done at this point. You know, it came to a point where it was almost like pity title giveaways to him, just so he makes an appearance. I thought it was time for guys like Bret Hart to step up, and Shawn Michaels, and even Razor at the time, even though he was on a way out too, soon after. But that was the changing of the guard in that way, and you needed Bret Hart to get over. You needed some of these faces who were going to be around for the next few years to go over.
Well, Hulk was out there busy being a TV star. Were you guys fans of Thunder in Paradise?
Yes, I was. Absolutely.
I was as a kid, but then that show ended up being like hot garbage now that I watch it back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was the movies, and then there was the first run syndication thing. Basically, it was Hulk Hogan inside your television, and it wasn't wrestling. So if your mom said it was too violent, it can be violent. He's saving lives, Mom. Can it turn up? You know, I loved it.
Never seen it. Never seen it.
Oh,
don't know much about it.
It's like the Sizzler. You love it as a kid, but now you won't be able to.
You don't like Sizzler?
I do not like Sizzler. It is a master of average.
How dare you?
Now we're talking about the restaurant, right?
Yes.
I thought Walker Texas Ranger would be a better comparison for Thunder in Paradise, but I don't know. Hogan had nothing on Chuck. Okay, good to know.
I like that Walker.
Well, not only is he out there making movies and TV, but he's also hiring WCW guys to star alongside him. The nerve.
I know. How dare he? Go to business for himself. That's the Hogan way. Well, he said it himself in a recent interview that there was some politicking that he did. That's why he protects his brand. So I'm not. No hot takes here. I'm not trying to.
Who did he bring in from WCW?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That's exactly my point.
All right, point proven. How about this little tidbit that they were trying to get Tonya Harding involved somehow? in Mania 10. This was right during the time that all the Nancy Kerrigan stuff had just happened at the Olympics, right?
That was 92.
Like right afterwards.
It was still...
Or it was still hot. Obviously,
okay.
back then, like the news didn't travel as fast as it does now, where you know, R. Kelly's kind of an afterthought right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
But back then, that thing lasted for like at least a year. Where like Tonya Harding was fresh, and it doesn't surprise me considering that I guess they try to get O.J. Simpson for Mania 12.
Yeah.
Like, Tonya Harding makes sense.
This is such a Vince thing to do. I mean, this is so Vince to bring in a controversial person and bring him into the ring to get all that publicity, get the PR. I mean, that's Vince being Vince in so many ways. I was totally not surprised by that.
No. Well, how about the Wahlbergs wanted to come in too and do a match? They've over the years we've seen Mark a couple times on like Raw and SmackDown, right when he has something to promote. But can you imagine the underwear model boys?
Yeah, not underwear model.
No, can you imagine that? I think you want to imagine that.
I was too young.
But I'm
then.
sure
I
you were a
didn't-
New Kids on the Block
No,
fan.
I was way too young.
Or was it
Wow.
NKOTB when they try to go a little bit
I
hood?
barely even knew who they were. No.
I think
I was too young.
NKOTB?
Yeah.
Dirty Dog?
Christy just turned 19, but
Right, exactly.
Sorry.
It's kind of funny having Donnie being the superior Wahlberg there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Walking around
That is
like,
funny.
Yeah.
That was weird. They talked a little bit about what they called Fan Fest back in the day and how this was sort of like a fun, new, cool thing. They sort of based it on the NBA fan experience. Have you guys ever been to Access at Mania?
yeah. In
have.
Chicago, they used to do it at Woodfield Mall. Listen, it was cool. Like, we would do, like, promos and stuff, or we'd do, like, entrances. They really set it up in the mall. So I remember once doing, like, a promo. I was cutting a Mr. Kennedy promo. I just talked about it before the show. And you had Hillbilly Jim and who was it?
Brooklyn Brawler.
No. The Mouth of the South.
George.
Jimmy Hart.
Jimmy Hart. Jesus. Jimmy Hart and Hillbilly Jim judging me, you know, like on how well I did in a promo, and then you got a prize for it. It was cool. They actually had wrestlers come on. They had autograph signings. Ended up with a Matt Hardy autographed Coke bottle. It's still on my shelf.
gosh.
Yeah. I got tons of autographs. It was all free. You could get tons of merch. It was super cool. Like, that was my highlight of WrestleMania. I think it lasted from, I believe they started doing it WrestleMania 21 through 24. For that 4-year gap in Chicago all the time. Even one of the WrestleManias was in Chicago, 22. But they would do that setup. It was an entire weekend in Chicago, probably like a week or two before Mania. Super cool. Tons of lines. I mean, tons of people showing up. Awesome experience.
And now it'll kick off Wednesday in the location where
Wednesday
WrestleMania
now?
actually starts on
Oh,
Wednesday
man.
usually, and goes through Sunday. You can see the Elimination Chamber they actually have there. I'm trying to think of some of the other fun, cool
They
stuff.
had
I
everything.
remember-
They have a cool little exhibit. Because I went in 31 when they were in San Jose. They had a cool little exhibit with like Ric Flair's robe, Undertaker's hat. Like the statues are all there. And obviously everybody's just walking around, chilling, like just being in that environment. It's just super cool.
Yeah, I've
There's
never been to one.
matches and NXT matches. We had progress matches a couple years ago. Christy St. Cloud made her debut
Whoa.
at WrestleMania Access.
She's my
Wow.
favorite.
Closing it out. I know.
Is there a line to get autographs? Or?
Oh, you bet there was. Everyone recognized me from Sean's show. But yeah, fan access. I just think it's fun to hear the beginnings of it because it is something that means so much to so many people. I mean, you go to WrestleMania, maybe you sit a million rows back and you can't really see anything, and maybe it's a great experience or maybe it's not what you expected. But you go to Access and you get up close and personal with the wrestlers and with all the fun stuff. And I just think that's
especially because
cool.
this was decades before like Twitter and Instagram, so it's like they were really kind of felt like they were this far and distant beyond experience with them on a regular basis.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Super cool memories, yeah.
All right, what do we remember about Little Richard's opening WrestleMania performance, guys? Is that something that stands out in your mind as fans?
I totally forgot about it, but I love.
Yes,
the
it
fact
doesn't.
That, I tell you, it reminded me with when Bruce mentioned Vince's handshake he does when he introduced him.
Yes.
So I went back to watch it. It's so comical to have him just wind up and be like Richard, you know, and it did seem like it was old even back then with the choir around the ring, but. I don't know, the New York City audience was pretty gracious. You know, I don't know why. I just feel it was kind of out of place, but yeah.
All I remember about Little Richard from back in this day is that he was on Full House a couple times as Denise's uncle. But it was a cool story that Bruce tried to convince him to have the chutzpah to go up to someone like that and say, hey, you know, I really think you should, you know, maybe sing live, Little Richard. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it happened, but Bruce must have been secure with his job then. But that night, he might have not after that night. After what happened later with other celebrities, too.
All right, well, the show opens up pretty strong with Owen and Bret. Right? Bret wanted to go over, but that was not the plan. What were your guys' reactions when you watched this one back?
Looking back on it, like again, storyline-wise, it made a lot more sense to have Owen go over there, right? So you had Owen being like, I beat the eventual champion, I have a stake to the claim, I'm still better than you, Bret. If Bret would have won and then won the title, it'd have been like, ugh. Like, now we would have said, sorry, you down our throats, and he's forcing us. So I thought it was the right decision, personally.
Real quick, by the way, we are live in the chat. I know some people are thinking that we're not, but we are live in the chat. But looking back, I remember I was still in the phase of
What
like...
are they saying? Are they saying anything good?
They were just saying, hey, I dared him to mention anything in the chat. And I just did.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah,
Shut up. Give me your phone. I just forgot to bring my little thingy over here.
But going back, this was still like when I was like rooting for the good guys, booing the bad guys. But I remember looking back at this time in '94, I'm like, why do I keep watching this match back over and over again? And why do I keep thinking this match was completely amazing? And yeah, it was like totally filled the story. Like the fact that Bret wanted to go over for like, I guess for like a brief second. Yeah. I mean, but it kind of like, we know now that's like, that was one of the best matches we've ever seen. And I'm kind of curious, like maybe we can get some opinions from you guys, or maybe even the chat. Is they always say, "Oh, this is the best opening match in Mania history." I'm sorry, like maybe the best opening match in pay-per-view history. Like, why do you keep saying Mania? Like, what other match is better in pay-per-view history that you keep having to say Mania history?
Well, there's one that's better to Bruce, and that's John Cena versus Big Show. That's what he said, remember? Did you forget about that? So
WrestleMania 20.
Two WrestleMania best opening matches? Wow.
Full circle.
Yeah. No, this is a show stealer of the night, and to open up the show, and you had that built-in rivalry, brother versus brother. You don't need to write the stories for this. This is already self-made in a lot of ways. Both put on good technical, clinical match, from both accounts, and cool finish too. There's nothing not to like about this match, especially since that was kind of the crowning moment or night of Bret Hart going forward, and I thought it was a really good way, and putting over Owen at the same time.
To me, the big deal was looking back, and us as historians, is you look at a main event babyface. That was probably the first time, maybe even ever, a main event babyface lost clean. Like 100%. There's always shenanigans. There's always like interference. This is 100% clean. Right. So Bret, being the great storyteller that he is, and for this match to kind of last as long as it has, or in the test of time, like it just one of the best opening match in pay-per-view history.
Fair enough. Yeah, I always thought they'd say WrestleMania not to like qualify it, but just to say of all the matches and pay-per-views, WrestleMania's on this level and this is on that level. But I totally agree with you for sure.
Interesting. How about the idea that Luna was like a small Bam Bam Bigelow?
I never thought about that until.
Well, yeah, interesting point.
I like this match. I know they were crapped on it. I really like this match.
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
Everything. It was just a fun match. I mean, Doink and Dink. Like I thought they were a great combo.
Say no more.
Yeah.
It's always in that blow off second match spot, so the expectations are always lowered, and Luna could go. I do think that Dink should not have been in that ring as far as like work rate, but that's very, very inside.
Dink was a great wrestler.
Oh, but not in that match. He wasn't. I don't think he was in that match. But the other three performers are great. I'm with you. I think the match is okay.
Where's Bourne? I mean, that was like a whole thing about Matt Bourne not being there. That was a big topic. Bruce talked about how much of a superior worker and Doink he was.
Right.
Did you guys notice the changes in the Doinks? I mean, I never did.
I never did. I just always thought it was Brooklyn Brawler. Because he like played like hit
yeah,
brawler,
that's right.
MVP, or what the baseball guy.
Yeah.
So you just assumed?
Yeah, I really did.
He's everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, poor Randy Savage. Right?
He brought it on
wanted
himself.
This match versus Crush. He asked for it, but it was, according to Bruce, a debacle. Too long. There was no psychology, no chemistry, which is so weird considering the fact that these two were such good friends.
Yeah,
that's almost unheard of.
We talk about ring psychology, and I know sometimes we get lost in the weeds with that as fans, but I saw a clear example of just things that made no sense in that match. The tie-up that didn't really work out, but Crush still sold it, or the elbow drop and being rolled out and still selling it, and I was just like, what was the point of that? And to have the babyface go over with a gimmick like that just reminds me of that match that Cena had with Batista where he taped his legs over and then what's that? It just feels weird.
I never liked those finishes.
It's a cheap victory. And then even when Batista came back and was like, that's something Hornswoggle would have done. It just totally sounds like a cheap shot. So.
Do you guys remember that as being Randy Savage's last in-ring appearance with WWF? Like, does that stand out to you as that?
Yeah, but I remember during this time, I didn't really see that many Falls Count Anywhere matches. So I thought this was normal. Like, you make the pin and then you run back to the ring.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, man, this match is awesome. But now looking back, I'm like, yeah, that match is garbage. Like, that made no sense.
Makes no sense at all.
Sad. Oh, that makes me sad. And that was the last one.
I mean, to think about a lot of ways to WrestleMania 9, you had Randy doing commentary to prior WrestleMania.
Right.
Crush was the Hawaiian face going against like a heel doink, right? It just like so much flipped over in that 1 year. And I felt like it was out for a lot of guys at this point.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of that matches where, you know.
Like I said, the bright side would be Savage's WCW work, but that's another show for another time. I like this whole madness thing. Let's go.
Okay.
Snap into a Slim Jim.
Who doesn't remember that?
Yeah.
Anyone who even wasn't a wrestling fan, that's probably the one. If you ask them, what do you know about wrestling? They say, well, that one colorful guy with the beef sticks.
Put it over.
Is that what they were, beef sticks?
Yeah, I guess they were beef sticks. Yeah.
Have you ever had one in your pre-vegan days?
I think so. Yeah. Probably, because that seems like a white trashy kind of thing we would eat.
Oh my God. Hey, I'll tell you. You want to know? You want to know? My childhood, Slim Jim, Hot Cheetos, and Coke.
Wow. Okay. Hot Cheetos back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Were there?
Hot Cheetos like at least 25 years old.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought those were a new thing. Everyone was going nuts.
And the Flamin' Extra Hot Cheetos.
You are 19, Christy, after all. We are older,
Hey,
so.
I won't argue. All right. Well, how about this women's match? Bruce kind of wrote it off as just a novelty, and the whole Leilani thing, maybe she was a little bit past her prime, but they were trying to hit that nostalgia note on that. It didn't do much for the women's division.
I thought it got the job done. I mean, Leilani was definitely had a little ring rust on her, and she was a little slow to move on some of the reaction things. And Alundra tried to do a little extra because it was WrestleMania. But when it was all said and done, it served its purpose. It showed Alundra as dominating someone who was at least heavier than her in her weight class, if you believe in that stuff. And she had pyro, so that's always good.
I feel like because Hogan was out, I feel like Vince or whoever else wanted somebody from WrestleMania 1 on this card. So I feel like that's why Leilani Kai got the spot.
Oh, that was just a full circle thing.
But yeah, but I kind of like looking back, I feel like, and I kind of asked Bischoff about this at the last 83 Weeks episode, where this is probably exactly why Bischoff maybe didn't have a women's division in WCW, because it was Alundra Blaze and really no one else. Like Leilani Kai was like just randomly showed up.
And that's when, during our discussion of Uncensored 1996, so even 2 years later, she's the only one we're hearing about.
Yeah, and Bull Nakano wouldn't come in until like months later, and then Bertha Faye, but it was always one at a time. It was never like, it was always only one babyface women wrestler, and then one at a time it was heel after heel, and it's like, and then that's it.
Just the fact that everything that Medusa, Alundra Blaze, everything she's done and what her career survived through, not even having any competition, no opponents for her. I mean, it's just incredible.
She
was a crazy. She was.
Yeah, but it's crazy how she's kind of forgettable. Like she shouldn't be, because she's been around. She was kind of a pioneer in a lot of ways.
Sure.
We then know of the women's division. She was the consistent mainstay in a lot of ways, and that could work. But we don't remember her, acknowledge her. She did get acknowledged in the Hall of Fame recently, but it's like I have to remember, like, oh, where do I remember? Oh, Medusa from WCW. But like, she doesn't come immediately to your mind when you think about like women pioneers.
It's because of the way she poises herself. I think she still very much sees herself as someone who has a career and is still going to do a lot. And if she would talk about herself in like a way of, oh yeah, remember how great I was? Look at all the things I accomplished. But you have a conversation with her now, and it's like, oh well, I still have to get my book out, and I'm still doing this, and then I raced race cars or monster trucks or whatever. I think it's just the fact that she doesn't put herself out there like that. Like, there's a lot of guys who sit around and go, hey, remember, I'm a legend, and that's okay. You earned it.
Yeah.
And it's
she
crazy.
just doesn't do that.
That is so tragic, to be like, you're so forward thinking and driven that you don't get praise for being driven in your own.
Wow,
it's so ironic, man.
And it's crazy because we always hear about these backstage stories about Paul Heyman kind of helping out Ronda Rousey and a lot of the women on the roster today.
Yeah.
But Medusa was like the first Paul Heyman girl. Like, just those like videos of her in WCW within the Dangerous Alliance, like, to me, like, she was way ahead of her time, even back then.
That could have been it, yeah.
Is it the level of competition that ultimately keeps her out of everyone's mind? Like, no one can think of a really good, like, long feud or anything? Or
I thought her match with Bull and Nakano were awesome.
For sure. No, those are great.
Yeah, but that's a good point, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never thought about it.
Oh, very interesting. Well, we got a little tag match up in here too. No big deal. The show's already heavy, and this is what I wanted to ask you guys. This is why I'm glad you're here, George. All these French guys, Jacques and Pierre, the Quebecers, all that.
Yeah.
Is one of them now
PCO?
a commentator for the French channel?
No, the brother is. Jacques, his brother Ray Rougeau is the commentator for the French
Okay,
commentating team.
because one of the French commentators I met once and had a very nice conversation with him, and he always remembered me and actually acknowledged my existence.
Yeah.
At
But yeah,
pay-per-views.
that's Raymond,
so I just
Raymond
remember
Rougeau.
him.
He was part of the fabulous Rougeau brothers, which one of the best underrated themes of the 80s.
The All-American Boys?
All-American Boys.
Wait, so they were the Quebecers or not?
No. Jacques was in the Rougeau brothers. He became the Mountie.
Yeah,
but then he
that's
came
right.
back as the Quebecers when he was not the Mountie. Remember that theme song?
See, there's that Mountie.
Okay.
They messed it up on the commentary too with calling him Mountie. I think was it? Yeah, Jerry the King Lawler called him that
Something like
That's
that.
right.
during this
Confused.
pay-per-view too.
Okay.
It's a good song to work out.
Which
to.
was great because like they can't be the Mounties, so like the theme song goes, "We're not the Mounties."
Yeah.
I love that theme song. I think Quebecers, even though I think this match was hot garbage,
Oh, yeah.
I think the Quebecers are one of the most underrated teams that ever lived. It's just because they didn't have the longevity. They were only one from like August '93 to like May of '94.
How did they
Wow.
meet their end?
I'm sorry?
Eventually, like they were
Like they
released,
lost
or
to the
they-
head shrinkers, and they just kind of split up. Jacques didn't have the best like reputation, considering like his. Have you ever read his son or seen his son?
No.
You look at his son, he looks like a pro wrestler, but because
Is he
the
a pro
bad,
wrestler?
he's training, but like because he's had such a bad reputation, like they won't even look at him.
That he was just difficult to work with.
Yeah, like even Kevin Owens, who first got trained by Jacques, says he's garbage. He's a piece of trash.
They tried to reincarnate him with Rene Dupree later on, right? Remember that? French Canadian.
Yeah.
I like them too. There's two different Rob Conway incarnation of it, and the other
Just
one
look
was
at me,
yeah. I love those guys.
I knew you guys would remember all this good stuff. I love it. Okay, we got a heavyweight title match between Yokozuna and Lex Luger. A lot of talk about Lex Luger and what was going on before, leading up to this. What was your take on what we learned about what was going on backstage with Lex Luger on this episode?
Doesn't surprise me.
That's pretty good.
And that's another guy that
surprised.
didn't have the best reputation. Like
Yeah.
you hear about like the Lex Express. I heard one of the reasons why I just kind of fell because I just heard he was a miserable human being. You know, he's going out there kissing babies, but like
Yeah.
not wanting to. You know what I mean? And I just heard he wasn't like the most fan friendly person. That's why it probably didn't work.
Oh,
Because he wasn't all
yeah.
in.
I knew that because WrestleMania 9 told me the narcissist Lex Luger. I mean, it was a fitting storyline, right?
Yeah.
WrestleMania 9, the precursor to everything else in a lot of ways. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. And then going into his WCW days too, you know, like when you go into the Elizabeth thing, I mean, there's just so much controversy always swirling around him. And, you know, he fell on hard times later on in real life, and you didn't hear much about it too. That's telling too. So it probably dates back to this time, you know, a lot of these things, how he kind of was written off and forgotten in the wrestling universe in a lot of ways.
It's pretty tragic. I was on board as a kid. I was a weird kid growing up. I didn't like Bret Hart as a kid, but I did love Lex Luger because he had the whole. I'm a sucker for United States gimmicks. I can't tell you how much.
Okay.
So like the episode of Superstars when the Lex Press got off and he body slammed Yoko, I thought, oh my gosh, this guy is the man, you know. And seeing it now as an adult realizes he really wasn't selling it. Like Dusty says, you got to be the gimmick.
Yeah.
It did seem like he was wearing just different tights and being something.
Yeah, like he didn't really
very-
change that much.
No, and that's why, like, watching it now, it's like, oh, I get it. That's why it didn't work. But as a kid, I was like, where's my Lex? You know, he's the man.
But the fact that people pick up on that, you know, Bruce was saying, like, he just didn't really work with the fans. And, you know, if you're not genuine, people can pick that up.
And especially like you look at everything that Bret. We all remember that Bret video with the little kid like Bret. Like I don't know, like you just would never hear like Lex. Like you just I don't know. You just you probably hear that and you probably think Lex will be like ugh, another one of those kids, you know?
Just him sneering and walking away.
Yeah. Start flexing his pecs or something.
Wow. Well, since you guys are so sassy tonight, well, how do you feel about Harvey Whippleman?
Former women's champion, Harvey Whippleman?
Yeah, you know it. You know it.
It's a loaded question, because, yeah, I'm not a fan. Because he brought up Fink, right?
Yeah.
And his hairpiece, and he was saying some random stuff to him. And I was like, I don't know what this is for. Is it entertaining? Is it supposed to get heat? Is it supposed to be making him more of a jerk? Skip. So it didn't really hit me as hard as I think he wanted to go there. But
Yeah.
that's just hard for you.
Well, he still works with the company. He's like
what?
He's kind of a runner type, like.
Oh, like get coffee.
When
and
they
stuff?
order
Get
30,
coffee.
when they order 30 steaks from Morton's around the corner from Staples Center, when Brock Lesnar is on the show, then Harvey's the one who would go and pick those
Oh,
up.
that's cool.
Props.
They know they have
A
Uber
trusted
Eats
right
now.
hand man.
Right. It comes
They don't
to
have
you.
Grubhub, right?
No, they got a Whippleman. What do they need?
That's
Grubhub
right.
for?
Quick
and a
delivery.
nice guy too, and everything that you would expect him to be, as far as a little cheesy. How about this WWF Intercontinental title ladder match? How about it is a stupid ass way to present this, because this is one of the greatest matches in history and also sort of made the ladder match.
I disagree. This match sucked. I'm kidding.
First of all, the greatest
I'm
match of all
kidding. I'm
time
kidding.
was Earthquake versus Adam Bomb in that same no. It was phenomenal. It definitely was, and it was a lot more brutal than people give it credit for. I mean, what Shawn Michaels did specifically to Razor towards the end, kid me, almost died. 'Cause I was a big Razor mark. But as an adult, I'm like, wow, to be able to try all these things at once, far less, was amazing. So.
The funny thing is, or actually the interesting is, I just saw on WWE their YouTube channel, they have the WWE playback thing, and they had live commentary with Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall recently.
Oh,
they must
wow.
have done it over, and they're watching the match. It's like a watch along. So they watched the match and comment on it, and there were some really cool takeaways from both of them. They love the over the top shot.
Did that just come out? Do you think they did that last week when
Oh yeah,
Scott was at the PC?
I think it's the newest thing that they came out with. It must have been very recent because Shawn Michaels got the NXT hat on. Okay, so that's recent enough for me.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it was really cool to see them talk over it, and they were, especially Scott. He seemed so proud of that match. It was cool to kind of see them talk about it. But what an iconic match in so many ways. Just the ladder kind of breaking apart. A lot of the talk they had in this playback was that about the ladder. They only had one ladder to work with, and they didn't know what to do with it if it really broke down. Like, what would you do? And they were kind of discussing, like, this ladder crapped out on us, and we just had to continue working. So many takeaways. Just even seeing them talk about it, it's just so memorable.
But Bruce did reveal there was another ladder under the
You're gonna believe
ring,
Bruce?
right? You think that was a... See,
Sean and Scott agreed.
Hate this
Sean and
show,
Scott
okay?
agreed that there was only one ladder, so I'll take it for them. 'cause
Okay,
they-
I didn't know that they had said that.
Yeah,
Okay.
they both talked about how it was.
I
there's
wouldn't be
only-
surprised, not trying to defend Bruce, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of maybe mixed up their match from SummerSlam 95.
He did
Where-
seem a little confused.
because that match seemed very convenient that now there's more than one ladder match or ladder involved in the match where it's like they kind of knew have a backup plan. But yeah, this is another match where I'm like, I hate Shawn Michaels as a fan, but why is he so amazing in this match? This is one of those first times where I'm like, man, this guy is awesome.
Yeah.
I think he's number one all time. But this is one of those where it's like, man, this guy is just so insanely I can't stop watching this guy in the ring.
Well, this
yeah.
sort of made him the king of the ladder match when really it was Bret's idea to do a ladder match, and that was sort of, he considered it his thing. Not his thing anymore after this.
No.
Brad has his own accolades.
Yeah, I'm
He's
curious.
fine.
I'm not anti-Bret. Okay, I really like Bret, but he's very bitter. About a lot of things where because he talked about it in his book, oh, that's my match. I brought it in from Stampede, and they claim it's okay, dude. We can acknowledge you as somebody maybe brought in it, but God forbid anybody else can have a great match that you brought in. You know what I mean?
You know what? I'm not. It's not quite the same comparison, but I understand where Brett's coming from because they make a point every year to mention Bischoff's contributions to Elimination Chamber. But they never say Bret Hart brought this from Stampede. It's never the same level. But you're right. He is incredibly bitter. But for me, what made the match cool was the fact that there was two titles on the line. Everyone was uncrowned champion their own way. It felt like a super title card match. Who was going to win? But to your point, I can imagine Bret Hart sitting there being like, all right, it's my match. I lost to Owen. This sucks.
And even that, it's dude, you're already gonna close the show as champion. What more do you want? Give somebody else the opportunity to get over. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I can't agree. Can't disagree.
Oh, all right. Everybody's getting it from you guys today. And the fact that that ladder match went long, like all the other matches before it, meant that the 10-man tag would be cut from WrestleMania. I can just... the emotional aspect of this stuff is what really speaks to me. And can you imagine getting ready for that, preparing for your big WrestleMania moment? And this was a lot of guys that were going to get their moment in that match, to be told minutes beforehand that it's not happening.
Didn't we see that on the first episode of Total Divas?
Yes, and that's why I know it was so heart-wrenching, and I think about that all the time.
It
That made
happened
me
to the
so
women's
sad.
match all the time. You used to at WrestleMania. They either shortened them or didn't get on the card.
Yeah.
So this is something that happens at WrestleMania. But when you look at this WrestleMania, me and Flo were talking about this. It was so short. It was like 2 hours and 40 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
It was like 163 minutes. So that's a short WrestleMania. Now that's halftime of a WrestleMania.
Right.
So they couldn't squeeze them in. And it was interesting how they wrote them up. Like, they can't decide who's going to
Yeah,
wrestle.
yeah.
So they gave him like 10 seconds of screen time, even in the locker room, which was just such a blowover. It sucks for them.
Poor guys, yeah. Oh, all right. Well, because we couldn't see the 10 men, but
We did
it's
get to see it
time
on
for
Raw.
the main event.
Not the next day, but the week after.
The week after. Oh, not even the Raw.
No, it was the week after
Mania.
that. It was like 2 weeks after
Oh.
Oh
Mania.
my god.
Yeah.
They couldn't even get the Raw after Mania. Those poor guys. Damn. All right. Well, all of the whole night culminated into this main event match for the championship: Yokozuna versus Bret Hart. Special ref Roddy Piper, who almost found himself on the commentary team if Lawler wouldn't have gotten his stuff straightened out. But here he is as a special guest ref on this match. Was this one that you guys were excited to go back and watch?
With Burt Reynolds, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Burt was the selling point for you.
Oh, wow.
so-
Are you sure that was an exciting match then?
I think of Burt Reynolds only as, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but he's Monica's hot old boyfriend from Friends, right? Richard?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Isn't that Burt Reynolds?
No, that's Tom Selleck.
Oh, yeah, it is Tom
Come
Selleck.
on.
Oh, you're
Blue
right. Now that
Bloods.
you've pointed that out, now I can picture Burt
That's
for
Reynolds.
Magnum PI.
I'm going to keep on
Blue
singing to this
Bloods.
19-year-old Christy theme.
The thing is,
But we learned that he wasn't very nice.
he wasn't. And to be fair, I mean, he's had a legendary stories about him, about how unnice that guy is. But to your original point, I was not a fan. I was already checked out by then because he had Yokozuna, which is someone I didn't like. He was a heel. Heels are bad. And then Bret Hart was somebody as a kid I could never get into. So it was like, what would be in it for me? Like the good wrestling and psychology? I want to go to bed. I'm tired.
This was Bret's redemption. Once again, WrestleMania 9, a prequel to this.
Right.
Everything about WrestleMania 9 manifests in WrestleMania 10 in a weird way. So it's that rematch without Hogan, thankfully, this time around. I was a Bret Hart guy. So for me, this was it. This was the crowning moment. This was Bret's time. And yeah, Yokozuna at the time was that force that no one could stop, kind of like the Brock Lesnar in a lot of ways, you know, back in the day. Like, if you got through Yokozuna, you are getting through, like, defeating the dragon, you know, not Ricky the Steamboat Dragon, but just like, actually, it's like David versus Goliath every time you face Yokozuna, because you not only had that imposing look and physique, everything about him, but he had, like, always someone interfering for him, you know, he just had always so many advantages in his way. So overcoming Yokozuna was just always so many obstacles in one. And, you know, Mr. Fuji always, Mr. Fuji. Did I get it right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm trying, like, losing it.
Yeah, with Mr. Fuji.
Yeah, Mr. Fuji. Oh, he's always throwing the salt or whatever at people, or the powder. So in that ways, it was just a huge crowning moment, I thought, for Bret Hart and overcoming the big bad beast.
Maybe I'm just bitter that Lex didn't go there. But
Oh, God.
Kid me is upset.
It's okay. Kid, you can be mad. That's all right. We're learning things now. Encyclopedia of professional wrestling. Any thoughts on this one?
Nothing to add on. They kind of hit every spot. My only takeaway from the whole event, if anything, is I like that MSG setup. Like, they were like, oh, I don't like the setup with the camera, the hard cam facing the entrance.
Yeah.
I love that entrance. They did it almost every time they went to MSG. I know they did it for Raw last time that Raw was there in 09.
That's the one that Bruce said Vince hates?
Yeah.
That shot? Okay.
Yeah, that's why WrestleMania 20 had the shot from like the side.
Yeah.
I always like that mid, like where like the
Crowd was so
Yeah.
close. Did you guys notice how close the crowd was? Like, people were just literally grabbing. They had like no walkway there.
Yeah,
That's the
remember-
thing.
Remember Rumble 2008 when Cena came back?
Split doors.
Yeah, but when Cena came back and he was like the surprise entrance, like that crowd just felt so intimate with Cena. Like that reaction made so much more. I loved MSG that midway entrance. I was kind of upset that WrestleMania 20 didn't have that.
Yeah, it's very. Yeah, I think it's on very unique for that venue. Like, to me, it did seem pretty crowded. I think it would be too small for Mania, but it's definitely a cool setup to have.
Well, now it's too small, yeah.
Well, now it's all arenas and stuff. But
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time, even then, I felt like it was pretty tight.
I just broke the coaster.
Oh no.
Do you guys have anything to add about WrestleMania 10?
Yes.
It
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Changing of the guard. I thought that was an actual changing of the guard. Really, era of Hogan and all of the kind of the classics. You know, the people that had the previous 9 WrestleManias that were staples of that were rehashing every year were gone at this point, and it was the era of Shawn and Bret. That was the beginning of them in a lot of ways. And some of the mid-card guys, you know, you have the Doinks and Bam Bam Bigelows who stuck around for the next few years following that. It was the change of the guard, and it was really kind of the last of Yokozuna, too, in a lot of ways, too, as a dominant force. That was kind of a passing of the torch, too, in that moment. So I remember that as really a change for a lot of ways.
Like a month before, I had just found out that my mom's friend had a black box. So this was like the first event that she recorded for me. So I have it on VHS cassette. Yeah, and I would just watch. I thought this was probably the best pay-per-view at that time. Obviously, this is '94. Sure. I didn't see never pay-per-view at the time, but like at the time, I thought it was like from like top to bottom the best pay-per-view I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I'd always skip the Men on a Mission Quebecers match because I really thought that match was sucked. Yeah. But it's just because I hated that count-out finish. Like that. Even back then, I was like, why is there a count-out finish at WrestleMania for the titles? Like, you know. Give me a clean finish.
I'm in the same boat. I got that. My next door neighbor had the hot box. I got the tape the week after.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. And I also hate that match, too, because it wasn't real rap. I was like, that's not rapping at all. You know, throw your hands in the air, and something that doesn't even rhyme with air. Forget it.
So yeah, I remember on that tape, because I was in Peru for like a few months, so it was WrestleMania 10, an episode of Thunder in Paradise,
Oh, wow.
Monday Night Raw the week after the whatever the thing is, like episode of The Simpsons where like the elephant and Stampy.
Oh, yeah,
So I
Stampy.
have that video with VHS. I wish I had a VCR though.
Did you guys like, before we close in on this, did you guys like that celebration? Bret Hart, at like people coming out, like the wrestlers from the back, kind of hoisting him up and celebrating
liked
him.
that.
It was an interesting mix there. You had Tatanka, you had Lex, you had Shawn, you know, you had Razor. It was an interesting group there. And Bob Holly, too.
I liked it. It was weird when, like, Donnie Wahlberg came out.
Yeah,
Like,
it's just standing.
Let's talk about how the celebrities being used in Mania sort of relates to how they're doing it today. This is something we do on this show, George. We call it Something to Wrestle With Today. Oh, wow. And I wanted to give you guys a little time to offer your introspection as to how like those SNL guys are being used this year on Mania. Now that you've heard the kind of the behind the scenes story about all the celebs at WrestleMania 10, what are your thoughts on this?
I feel like it's a little bit better now because I feel like back then they would just get any celebrity that they can, as opposed to like nowadays we found out there's so many celebrities that are legit wrestling fans. Like I think Che might be an actual legit wrestling fan. Yeah. Not sure about Jost, but they're kind of a package deal. You know, so it's kind of like, you know, I feel like it's better now. Because obviously I was gonna ask you real quick, like you seem like a 90210 fan. Like how did you feel that like when they've said that Jenny Carth was kind of a you know a
I was
B-word?
surprised to hear that. I was because she seems fairly nice, but I guess
She just didn't want to be there probably.
Yeah, and back then I mean she was such a big deal back
Right.
then. I mean, and anyone
That was
who's
the
that
peak. I
big of a
mean,
deal like that
93,
now is
90,
probably kind of a jerk. They probably are.
I mean, we're used to it now, right? When we had the special Raw guest host at every WrestleMania, you had that whole run for a couple of years of guests, you know, on Raw every week. You had so many huge stars. We had Hugh Jackman, Bradley Cooper. We had major stars, like primetime stars coming on. So for me, and now it seems like they're kind of getting, they went away from it the last few years, and now they're getting back into it in a lot of ways. You can see. Just for this WrestleMania, the Colin Jost thing, I'm not buying that. I think it also, the bad thing about it, back then when they did it, they were just ring announcers or, you know, a timekeeper.
Like
You know,
what
they had-
Al Roker did.
Yeah, they just had like minimal roles, just kind of show them up. But now they get too involved in this. When, you know, when Jon Stewart is going over guys and
that
you
was
have things
so
like
bad.
that. Yeah, it's
was the
bad.
worst.
Like you can't let them. Like, Braun Strowman now is completely losing all credibility with me. He's getting jobbed out because if he's in an angle and they're putting over Colin Jost and SNL guys and Braun Strowman is a side story of it, you can't let that happen. So it depends how they use them, but I hope it doesn't get to the sad state. Let's put over celebrities and our guys that we've been pushing for years. Let's have them job out.
So who do you guys think have been some of the best Celebrity Mania guests? Who do you think we could maybe see inducted as the celebrity inductee this year?
Jonathan Taylor Thomas, WrestleMania 11. Hello.
That's a good one. I like that.
I'm kidding.
Well, the president's already in the Hall of Fame. Stephen Amell, he actually went over in his match.
He did. And he actually tried.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And he's still kind of like stunting for the cause and like wants to get back into it. And didn't he get into it with somebody recently on Twitter about like kind of defending that?
I'm sure he'll be very involved in AEW now that Arrow, isn't Arrow ending or ended?
Next season's the short season.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was fun. We bring it.
Put in Flo Rida.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised he's not in the Hall of Fame considering Kid Rock is.
That's right.
It's only a matter of time.
He's coming.
Listen, maybe this is Flo Rida's year, guys.
Yeah, that's my choice.
Well, next year since they're in Tampa.
Oh, call it now. Flo Rida.
Tell us how you really feel,
Flo
Chrissy.
Rida will be there live. People will
Wow. All right, before I start talking crap about Florida, I'm going to give you guys a chance to tell everybody where to keep up with you now that we won't be hanging out on Sunday nights anymore talking about this show. Jim?
I'm so sad about that, but you can find me at the Jim Alexander on all social media, realtalker.com, or that's REL talker.com, and still on those after shows for Raw and NXT. I'm around.
You can follow me at GHERMOZA, George Hermosa, this Friday night, Burbank, California. There is a Pro Wrestling show. I'll be wrestling against Fidel Bravo, March 29th, live.
That's huge, man.
I forgot it's March.
On Twitter at FloboVoice, on Instagram at Flobito and Flobito.com. And I'm also co-hosting the Raw After Show with this guy, DJ Alexander, and Star Trek Discovery on Thursday nights right here on AfterBuzz TV.
I love it. And you guys can always hit me up at Christy Reports. And do not forget to watch After 83 Weeks on the 83 Weeks channel on YouTube. That's Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We always have a Q&A with Eric Bischoff himself. And, we are always around. We'll be here.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys all soon somewhere else. Take care. Bye-bye.
Listen to Flo Rida.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.